Throughout the centuries, there have been numerous reports of UFO sightings in cities across the globe. These sightings have been accompanied by a number of extraterrestrial events that have had a profound impact on human history. Notably, there has been an alien abduction witnessed by no fewer than 6 people, an occurrence that has left us pondering the mysteries of the universe. As some of you may know, I have had the privilege of being involved in many conversations of dozens of extraordinary encounters on my podcast. Out of the thousands of reports of extraterrestrial encounters from advocates, these were the most compelling stories found. Each of these stories contributes to the mounting body of evidence that suggests we have indeed been visited by extraterrestrial beings over thousands of years. It is a topic of great significance, and I am honored to share my insights with you. November 5th, 1975. 22-year-old forestry worker Travis Walton is driving home after sundown, along with 6 co-workers, when suddenly a strange light appears in the sky.
Just loaded up our equipment. We're headed out, and I looked up ahead, and I saw this kind of glow coming through the trees. First, I thought, no big deal. It was deer hunting season. Thought maybe there was some hunters camped up on the hill up there. But when we burst into the clearing where we could see the source of this glow, it was just, whoa, it was just mind-blowing.
Travis was so intrigued that he got out of the truck to get a closer look. And that's when things got really weird. The craft started emitting a sound that was so intense the crew said they could feel the vibrations in the truck. And then, out of nowhere, Travis was hit with a beam of energy that sent him flying. The crew thought he was dead, but he wasn't. He woke up on an elevated gurney, looking into the face of an extraterrestrial creature. Travis was understandably freaked out by the whole thing. He said he felt like he'd been hit with a physical blow, but with a tingling electric shock feeling at the same time. And the crew said that it was like he'd stepped on a landmine. The explosion was so violent that they thought he was dead, but he wasn't. Travis recounted that these hideous entities caused him to panic. He remembers frantically trying to escape. But then, out of nowhere, these more human-looking aliens show up, which immediately calm him down, and he starts to think maybe they're there to rescue him. However, then, Travis has a mask placed over his face, and he immediately passes out. There's a theory that these human-looking aliens were actually the same ones, just shape-shifting to calm him down. So his crew searches for him everywhere, but he doesn't turn up until 5 days later, lying face down outside in the dark. Travis remembers seeing the bottom of the craft before it shot up into the sky. When details of Travis Walton's close encounter were revealed to authorities, they dismissed his account as a possible hallucination. But Travis has no doubt that what he and his co-workers experienced was a genuine extraterrestrial encounter. What no one asked was, what about the rest of the crew? How do 7 people have an identical hallucination? And besides that, they were given a lie detector test by state police, which they all passed. There are real-life extraterrestrial things that occur out there that need to be better understood. It was in the 6th century BC that divine beings descended from heaven and made contact with a Hebrew priest named Ezekiel, who was by the river Shabar. He described a great whirlwind coming toward him, which he said was a fire enfolding itself, and out of the fire came a color of amber, which means polished spectrum metal in Hebrew, implying that it was metallic and spinning. The object landed in front of him, and suddenly 4 creatures emerged from the whirlwind. In the Bible, the prophet Ezekiel calls these spiritual beings cherubim and describes them as having 4 faces, 4 wings, and skin that shone like polished bronze. He says that he was taken up into the sky and transported to different places where he could see different things. He was also told about future events. This was a huge image of hope that came to Ezekiel during his experience. However, is this the story of a divine encounter? Or could Ezekiel's description of metallic wheels descending from the sky in a whirlwind of fire and strange beings with skin like polished bronze point to a different type of otherworldly contact? Ezekiel provides one of the best descriptions of a UFO in the Bible, as he essentially says that the object looked like a wheel within a wheel, a classic flying saucer description. Ezekiel describes that the outside of the wheel does not spin, but the inside does. indicating that this is the engine. None of this necessarily has to be magic. It could all be technology. He is essentially the kind of guy who has been abducted, told certain things, and then returned to the place of origin. It would be what we today describe as an abduction account. Could it be that the prophet Ezekiel's account of a heavenly close encounter might have been something else? Perhaps one not involving heavenly beings but visitors of another interplanetary nature? This concept was put forth to the public by the ancient astronaut theory pioneer Erich von Däniken in his 1968 book, Chariots of the Gods. After hearing Erich speak at a conference in the early 1970s, NASA engineer Josef Blumrich was determined to debunk his controversial interpretation. Erich recounted his speech at NASA in Huntsville, where he spoke about Ezekiel. The chief engineer of that time, Mr. Josef Blumrich, connected with Erich and was fascinated by his ideas. Though Erich suggested he read the Book of Ezekiel, Blumrich, though hesitant, decided to read the book anyway. Joseph set out to find flaws in von Däniken's theory, but when he finished reading the Book of Ezekiel, he was shocked to find himself agreeing with the controversial author. In fact, he wrote a book called The Spaceships of Ezekiel, in which he provided a blueprint for a practical landing module based on the description found in the biblical story. Several years later, a German structural engineer named Hans Herbert Bayer also sketched out a blueprint of the second section of the Book of Ezekiel, where Ezekiel is told to construct an open-topped building to house the flying chariot. Hans Herbert Bayer sent the blueprint to Erich von Däniken, who, within 5 minutes of looking at the blueprints, was on the phone with Joe Blumrich. He asked Joe to bring a model of his spaceship of Ezekiel, and then called Hans Herbert Bayer to ask him to bring a model of his construction of Ezekiel's temple. Both models were created to the same ratio. And guess what? Ezekiel's spaceship fit into the temple construction that Hans Herbert Bayer recreated according to the biblical measurements. As far as ancient astronaut theorists are concerned, the biblical account of Ezekiel provides conclusive evidence of an alien encounter. But more importantly, it may also reveal that for thousands of years, the destiny of humankind has been directed by extraterrestrials. Back in 1946, a bunch of ancient manuscripts were discovered in some clay jars deep inside a cave, and among them was the Book of Enoch, a so-called lost biblical text. Enoch was the 7th of 10 patriarchs who lived before the Great Flood, and the great-grandfather of Noah. But where the Hebrew Bible only briefly mentions Enoch, the Book of Enoch greatly expands on his story. According to the Book of Enoch, he was just 12 years old when he had his close encounter with extraterrestrial beings. The whole community of his village was sleeping when they heard a noise in the sky. 2 angels came down and told him not to be afraid. Then they took him up to heaven in a fiery chariot, where he saw some incredible things. Enoch saw planet Earth underneath him, and he described his arrival in detail. He walked through different rooms where he saw jewels, shiny surfaces, and blinking lights. It's an eyewitness account. Enoch himself saw all of this. He even said that what he saw looked like houses made of crystals, but he had no other words for spaceships or anything else during that time. Now, some people believe that the Book of Enoch is describing an actual abduction event that took place thousands of years ago. And if that's true, then it might be documenting communication with otherworldly beings. Enoch was said to be at the right hand of God, and in later tradition, he was even called God's scribe. So if Enoch was given information from extraterrestrial beings to share with mankind, as ancient astronaut theorists contend, what truths about our otherworldly past might be waiting to be revealed? The extraterrestrials want us to start thinking about these things. They want us to start asking questions. And the fact that there are so many encounters, sightings, and descriptions from biblical times onwards tells us that there's something going on. It doesn't necessarily tell us what it is, but it tells us that something is there. So let's keep our eyes and minds open, and maybe one day we'll learn the truth about our otherworldly past.